The RCGP Council is kind of the clinical head of the RCGP itself. And in this episode, I'm going to explain what it means to be part of the RCGP Council, how you get onto it, and my experiences over the past 3 years as being a national representative to the RCGP Council on your behalf. So let's get cracking and explain everything all about it and my thoughts on being a national representative. Hopefully, this is a different episode. Shall we begin? Hi, so in this episode, we're going to be talking about what it means to be an RCGP National Representative to Council, what the Council is, and basically what you need to know about it. Over the past 3 years, I've been a national representative. I was elected back in 2018. And since that time, I've been acting on the Council, hopefully to the best of my abilities to help general practice as best as we can. It's interesting to know the RCGP is the largest representative body for general practice in the UK, with over 50,000 members. And it basically aims to strive towards quality standards and various other parts of general practice to try and make the working lives of GPs a little bit easier. It does sometimes face criticism about the way it does things. Talk a little bit more about that a bit later on. But one of the key parts of the RCGP is its council. So the council is effectively like the parliamentary head of the RCGP. Is probably a way of thinking about it. I will point out this stream is going to be my opinions rather than possible facts, so I may get some things wrong. Apologies if we do that, but hopefully a lot of this should be clear and information that's available. With the council itself, it's important to note how it's structured. So the majority of council is made up of the faculty representatives. So across the country, there are various different faculties, and each faculty will then send a different representative to council, which meets on approximately 4 times a year. And basically, those people represent the views of their local members. In addition, there are other people who sit on council. So, for example, nationally elected representatives, of which there's 18, and as well as various other representative bodies within the RCGP itself, like, for example, First Five, AITs, as well as other areas like the education and military bodies and various other parts. They also have some observers that join from other organizations like the GMC, the Royal Association of Colleges, or whatever it's called, ARAO. Yeah, you know what I mean. And they also have observer seats as well, where people can go and watch what council does and how it does things. In addition, you've got the officers of council, which include the honorary secretary, the treasurer, and the chair. There are also recently some vice chairs of various different areas, including memberships and other parts. So, how do you get elected onto council? Well, you could be one of the faculty representatives and elected through your local faculty, or you could be a nationally elected representative, like I was. Every year, six positions are put up for nomination, and there's an election that happens normally around about April time, and the resulting winners end up joining council the following October, November time, depending on the structure of the year itself. Over that time, various people do different things. And the reason why it's six every year is just to provide structure and change. And the average term is 3 years for all of those roles. So, what do you do when you get elected? Well, in order to be elected, first of all, you have to apply. And then shortly afterwards, if you're successful, as in the top six of the election, then you join the council, as I mentioned, in November time. One of the key things I found when I joined the council was very much that the onboarding process, from my perspective, could have been a little better because there was a massive learning curve when I joined the council itself. In particular, I was not able to make the first kind of onboarding night because, frankly, I was still working in general practice and was only able to join for the first day of council itself. That meant a huge learning curve in terms of governance and structure and how it works in terms of how council votes, the way that all the papers come through. It's a fairly massive meeting. Each council day will normally start around about 9:30 and on average finishes at 4 and potentially a little bit later. Kind of sounds like general practice a little bit, doesn't it? And then throughout that day, there'll be various updates that occur in terms of the chair's update, various updates from the other chairs from various different parts. So, for example, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And then in addition, you'll have various papers that come through in terms of either from members, either from faculties, or papers that need discussion. So, for example, the different topics that the college is looking at. As you can imagine, over the past few years, there's been some controversial stuff that's come through, particularly with regards to workload and various other parts of general practice. We're going to come to that a bit later. In terms of how you structure things in council, well, it's quite interesting. Whenever you want to speak on a motion, you basically get the option to talk. Everyone gets into a queue through an electronic system, and then you normally have a few minutes to talk on the particular topic, and you can't really come back unless you're one of the people putting the motion forward. So a little bit of governance there. Clearly, one of the more challenging issues with the council over the past few years is that it kind of, well, my term happened over COVID. When I first started, we were still having face-to-face meetings at the 8:30 Euston Square, and the room is pretty impressive, I must admit. Massive, huge is probably a better word to describe it, and has the capacity to have various different members throughout that, and the systems to help in terms of voting and putting yourself forward for speaking and that kind of stuff. And the meetings were actually quite enjoyable, a little bit political, and definitely the opportunity to meet new people. But interestingly, it was, to be honest, a fun day. Opportunity to speak to people from different parts of the country, different walks of life in general practice, and understand how they're doing things, as well as debate topics, put across your views, and basically engage in what's affecting general practice. Obviously, through that, COVID happened and the things had to change because, well, you couldn't have 60 plus people in a big room anymore. And as a result of that, they had the first ever meetings via Zoom. And that's how things have continued up until the most recent meeting, which was then done as the first ever RCGP Council hybrid meeting. As you can imagine, EGP learners, I've been a really big fan of some of this because I think it's an innovative way of trying to change the way that the RCGP works. And moving towards hybrid meetings is something I've been really encouraging and keen to see that that continues as things move forward. I think it gives the opportunity of accessibility and the ability for people to engage when they may not be able to. Because important to note, you don't get paid for being on council; it's voluntary. So taking time away from work or other roles is part and parcel of it. Yes, you do get reimbursed for travel and for some of the accommodation if you're staying over, but actually, yeah, it means missing days off work or other parts of your life to attend council. What does council actually do? Well, as I said, it's the clinical decision making steer for the college itself. It's not the organisation that actually makes the decisions in terms of what college does specifically. So that would be the trustees that make the overall financial decisions of the college, and the trustees delegate a lot of that responsibility for the day-to-day running to the chair, to the treasurer, and to the other officers of the college themselves. But the council is not the body that actually makes the ultimate decisions of everything the college does. It does give an indication of the feel of what the profession wants to happen, and it does help to debate and decide a lot of the topics that happen that aren't substantial in that way. But it's important to remember it doesn't have the overall authority to decide absolutely everything that college does. And I know that's sometimes kind of a misbelief by many in the profession itself. It has debated some interesting topics over time. So we've had various different things like debates about euthanasia, various other topics, and certain things that have happened over the past few years that have been, to be fair, a little bit controversial. We've obviously had versions of things like the Sultan of Brunei's impact with the RCGP, and more recently, there's been stuff clearly around COVID and the direction of what happens. Many people often say, "What does the RCGP do for me?" Well, the council helps to deliver some of that in terms of clinical steer, decisions about topics that are happening, and also what the college tries to do. So, throughout COVID, for example, the RCGP did provide lots of amazing resources to help clinicians out in general practice and particularly the clinical topics and how to manage the conditions, how to understand what workload may need to be considered or less of a priority because of COVID, and providing other resources to help clinicians across the board. Specifically focused around education, obviously, but still supportive nonetheless. In addition, there's been lots of other kind of things that have come through from council in terms of decisions about how the college itself runs and opinion papers and that kind of stuff. But again, they don't have the ultimate authority to say yes or no to particular things. That is still with the trustees of the college themselves. So, what has my time over the past few years been like? Well, it's been interesting, that much is for sure. As I said, COVID was a bit of an unexpected twist to my council run and absolutely was, yeah, something I'm going to remember. I think over the past few years, we've had a lot of controversy. I think that's come from my perspective to the college, and I feel a lot of that has been made interesting by the governance structures within council and how it runs and how it approaches things. And that may be something that needs to be considered in terms of how council runs itself, in my view, in terms of the governance and everything else. Because I'll be honest, when I first joined, there was a lot of stuff around, let's be honest, pedantry about the way things are motioned and that kind of stuff. I'll be clear, that's not just restricted to the RCGP. Having attended various LMC and BMA meetings, it's endemic across, well, to be honest, organizational meetings as a whole, but especially medical ones. And you can see people arguing minutiae about the wording of various motions. It's sensible to get it right, I think, but also I think at times, sometimes it'd be nice if there's just a little bit of common sense in terms of looking at the emotion of things. But important to note that what is actually said and what is written has a far-ranging impact on things, and we've seen that in terms of the way that the college um, puts itself over. Many of my colleagues will know that I've been a massive and keen supporter of having better PR for the RCGP because I feel that by doing that, we will see better changes in terms of how the college engages with members and with non-members and the public, because sometimes it does a lot of amazing work. It's just not really good at shouting about it, to be honest. And I'm hoping that's something that we'll continue to see change as time develops. It is clearly difficult. The RCGP doesn't have access to, mainstream media and various other sources and has to rely on doing a lot of that itself. But hopefully we'll see change and things develop that will allow that to happen. So I guess this was to give you an insight from my perspective what council is like. Happy to take any questions or comments if you've got any. But if not, like I said, this is just an open and honest reflection of my time with the council itself. I would like to reflect on one part, which was when it came to my term to finish, would I apply again? So, to relate to that story, this was in April of this year, so 2021, and I got the notification to reapply if I wanted to be a nationally elected representative. And I did, if I'm being honest. I felt it was something I wanted to do. When I applied to be nationally elected rep, there were a couple of you know, manifesto pledges or whatever you want to call them that I was keen to move forward for. Absolutely representing my peers, looking at change in structure of the way that the college runs and particularly votes in its chair, and a couple of other things. And whilst I managed to achieve a lot of the stuff that I was hoping to do and represent hopefully my peers in this, and there are some things I wasn't able to do, and a lot of that was down to timing. And hopefully, another term will allow me to try and do that for my GP, basically all the GPs out there and stuff. But when it came to April, I'll be honest, it was chaos. It was busy. It was Easter, and I completely forgot to put my application in. And on reflection, when I realised that, I'll be honest, I didn't regret it. I think over the past year, because of all the changes that have happened with the college, maybe taking a break is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. So I am going to be taking off the next year because I'm not elected to as a nationally elected rep. I'm thinking I'm going to apply again in April. Hopefully you'll vote for me if that's the case, and hopefully I'll be able to continue to represent all my peers through all the various different channels and stuff that I've been able to share the information we've been doing and stuff to try and see how we can influence a decision making body within general practice. But I'm hoping you've enjoyed this live stream, this opportunity to hear from me in terms of my views of college, council, and all the other aspects and stuff. And as always, here to try and help tech enhance your primary care and learning. Guess I'll catch you in the next episode. See you later.